Share away. Clip and share, because we're going to get into some of the clips. So let's start from the beginning. Oh, by the way, David Anber, the Ottawa lawyer who's representing the elderly gentleman who was roughed up by the cops and is taking some of these files, is going to be popping in and joining us at 1 o'clock, give or take, 1 to 1:15. And we'll see where it goes. Viva, you could always do these live streams from home and bring in a few live streams like you did with your bro the other day, using your platform. Yeah, I don't want to try to keep my brother out of getting arrested or worse. But no, I like being on the street. My only problem is, or my only qualm is, I don't want my presence being a distraction from what I'm trying to document. But I do appreciate that people, first of all, enjoy meeting people they've only seen on the interwebs and enjoy expressing their gratitude for what people are doing to cover this. But I'm going to go back and, if nothing else, document, just hopefully nothing bad happens. But we'll get there. Thank you, Viva from the USA. I filmed Valentine's Day indictment, delivery countrywide, crimes against humanity. Kathy Tittle, thank you very much. Like father, like son. Well, that's a good time to get into it. I'm going to go share my screen now. Share my screen. Share screen. Chrome tabs. There we go. And I'm going to go, what do we start with? Let's start with going through my Twitter feed, not to advertise my Twitter feed, just because this is the diary through which I remember things. Trudeau is not, this is the pin tweet because it's an interesting thing. Trudeau is not yet acting like Hitler 1938, but he's certainly acting like Hitler 1933. This is the amazing thing. First of all, any comparison to historical atrocities generally are not well received. They can be misconstrued, deliberately misinterpreted, a la Gina Carano. I did say, however, that these historical analogies became a lot more, I will say, less unjustifiable, more justifiable the minute the government started implementing measures depriving the unvaccinated of essential goods, services, food, visitation to hospitals. As of the time these measures were being recommended to deny basic life services to the citizenry, I said the comparisons are fair game now. But the issue is that you think of dictators and you only think of them at their worst, at the worst of the atrocities that they committed historically, and you sort of forget that they existed in a timeline of sorts. In 1933, Germany was not what it became in 1938, 1939. So it's not, you can contextualize or you can temporalize certain comparisons, but people seem to not appreciate what happened in 1933 with the Reichstag fire, which was setting the Reichstag on fire, massive fire, which was used by Hitler to invoke Emergencies Act, war measures, the same type of law through which Hitler effectively became the unchallengeable dictator, through which he suppressed political oppression. We'll get to the Wikipedia entry if I can find it. That's what's her face, Chrystia Freeland. We'll get there. This is my diary of the world. The Reichstag fire, whether or not it was Hitler who set it up, whether or not it was a false flag, whatever. That incident was used as the excuse for Hitler to recommend implementing the Emergencies Act, which they then used to go after their political rivals. 16 hours ago, so I've missed my tweet where I said it. And now you can go Wikipedia just so you can refresh your historical memory. So the idea that you can't compare certain leaders because you can only compare them at their worst. It wasn't always 1939, and it was 1933 where they invoked the very same measures to do exactly what Justin Trudeau is doing now. Oh, here we go. This is it. In January 1933, the Nazi Party leader Adolf Hitler, this is from Wikipedia, so you can go if they don't change it, convinced President Paul von Hindenburg to appoint him as chancellor to head the German government. 4 weeks into his chancellorship, the Reichstag building caught fire in the middle of the night. Hitler blamed the incident on the communists and was convinced the arson was part of a larger effort to overthrow the German government. Listen to the terminology here and just change the words mutatis mutandis. An incident that was being used as an effort to overthrow the government. They have been calling this protest an attempt to overthrow the government. They said their stated objective was to overthrow the government. I interviewed Ben Dichter, the representative of the convoy, who clarified for anyone still repeating that lie. But listen to the terminology. to overthrow the German government. Using this justification, Hitler persuaded Hindenburg to enact the Reichstag fire decree. The decree abolished most civil liberties, include the right to speak, assemble, protest, due process. We're going to get back to this. Using the decree, the Nazis declared a state of emergency and began to arrest, intimidate, and purge his political enemies. How do I go back now? Okay, there we go. I can't see the comments or the chats now because I'm doing this all on one screen. Just compare that to what's going on right now. And let's go listen to Justin Trudeau's words, which I know I put up because we have to hear it. And I'm going to play it so we can hear it.
With Cabinet and Caucus, after discussing with Cabinet and Caucus.
Can we hear that?
After consultation with premiers from all provinces and territories.
Let me know if you can hear that.
Speaking with opposition leaders. The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. Let's stop it right there. That's one of the criteria for invoking the Emergencies Act. Let me just see if everyone could. Stop that. I want to see if everyone can hear. Okay, so everyone says you can hear the audio. That was one of the measures. That is the threshold to meet in order to invoke the Emergencies Act. The question here that everyone should be asking themselves is, what exactly were the provinces not able to deal with that required federal intervention under the Emergencies Act? Listen again. To supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. What were they not able to meet provincially? I want to be very clear. I want to be clear. The scope of these measures. Sorry. I want to be clear. What's coming next? Bullcrap and misinformation. I want to be very clear. The scope of these measures will be time limited. Time limited. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 2 weeks to flatten the emergency. It would be comical if it weren't tragic and outrageous. This is the guy now saying they're going to be temporally limited. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 2 years in, they're invoking the Emergencies Act. But trust him this time. Trust the twice ethics breaching, corrupt, groping other Trudeau now. Trust him now. It's going to be temporally limited. But don't worry, the assurances don't stop there. Geographically targeted, as well as reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address. The threats they are meant to address. It's not going to be shocking to everybody who's been watching my streams for the last 10 days that I've been there. I think we're up to 35 hours of stream now. The threats that they are meant to address. And incidentally, for anyone who's going to say, what about the Ambassador Ridge blockade? That's over. They got an injunction and that's open now. The threats that they're meant to address. The Emergencies Act will be used to strengthen and support law enforcement agencies at all levels across the country. One of the theories is that no one was towing the trucks in Ottawa locally out of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge support for the convoy. Everyone apparently had COVID and couldn't come in to tow the trucks. And so it's not a question of the provinces not being able to deal with the emergency. The grassroots support might be such that the only people who are going to do it are going to be Trudeau's henchmen at the RCMP level. Okay, keep going. This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs, and restoring confidence in our institutions. Protecting people's jobs from the guy who just shut down people's jobs and crushed their enterprises for over 2 years. And by the way, we all know, for anyone who has taken the time to see what's going on in Ottawa, businesses were not shut down, but for the fact that the government said, you better close down because it's going to be risky. And by the way, sorry, I'm not seeing any of the super chats and I can't bring them up because when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see them. So I'm looking on my phone, but thank you all. The government recommended that the businesses shut down for security reasons, for safety reasons, because this convoy was an extremist convoy. And by the way, at the same time, if you saw what Trudeau said yesterday, we might hear it in this clip. They're promising compensation to the businesses who have been interrupted. That is what you call buying off or buying up support. Trudeau lies on the basis of saying it's a threat. You better close down for your security, and we're going to pay you for your compensation. That is how you buy support based on lies. It's the exact same way how he corrupted the media, how he corrupted the provinces
by offering them $1 billion to implement this vaccine passport. And now he's corrupting small businesses to support him by saying, you better shut down, it's dangerous, and we'll pay you off afterwards. If those businesses had stayed open, first of all, they would have gotten more business than you can possibly imagine. I saw the Subway, the pizza place, I forget what it's called, Mulligan's, or I think it was called Mulligan's, a pub that stayed open. The pub that stayed open said that they didn't have that much business, but it was during a weekday, and they also were implementing the vaccine passport, which might not be good for business with this particular crowd. But the businesses that did stay open had good business. And the ones that were shut down, they were not compelled to shut. They were told to shut down, and now they're going to be bought off by Trudeau because he's very good at throwing around other people's money.
Here's how the measures we're taking today will help get the situation under control.
Under control.
The police will be given more tools to restore order in places where public assemblies can constitute illegal and dangerous activities.
Flip back to what we read about the Reichstag fire decrees. They barred protest, they barred public assembly. But don't worry, Justin Trudeau's telling you that while they're doing this, they're still respecting your constitutional rights. But listen to what he is saying is going to happen under this Emergencies Act decree invoking the act. Wait, listen to what he's saying.
Such as blockades and occupations. As seen in Ottawa, the Ambassador Bridge, and elsewhere. These tools include strengthening their ability to impose fines,
fortification,
or imprisonment.
Imprisonment for protest.
The government will designate, secure, and protect places and infrastructure that are critical to our economy and people's jobs, including border crossings and airports. Texas
Terry says, it's really difficult to listen to Trudeau. It physically turns my stomach. Thank you for the super chat.
And will not allow illegal and dangerous activities to continue.
Illegal and dangerous activities. Say the lie often enough and it will become truth. Illegal and dangerous activities. Anyone who has seen the protest in Ottawa knows what a bald-faced, shameless lie this is. And illegal? Who's declared it illegal? Is there a court order that declared this illegal? Just yet. So you basically said, the protest I deem to be illegal and dangerous, even though it's neither of those two things, demonstrably so. But I've now made it illegal to protest. By the way, the cars that are parked there, give them tickets. The roads, I've showed it in real time. They have had emergency access all the time. The roads, as close as 1 block down, have had lanes open. There's traffic if you go to Wellington and Parliament Hill. To call this illegal is to beg the conclusion, and to call it dangerous is to lie to the Canadian people. And there's too many people who are willing to buy the lie. One person on Twitter this morning said to me, "Oh, a 1-minute video showing them shoveling. What if that doesn't prove it's not violent?" And I said, well, here's 12 hours of video you can watch. And it's the same process every single time. 1 minute doesn't prove anything. I don't have time to watch 12 hours. Well, thank you. You've just provided me the ethos of ignorance. That was one of the tweets I had this morning. I don't know if ethos is the right word, but I like it.
The Emergencies Act will also allow the government to make sure essential services are rendered, for example, in order to tow vehicles blocking roads.
I didn't know towing vehicles was an essential service, and that begs that presupposes the conclusion that the tow trucks are blocking roads. Except for Wellington, traffic is absolutely flowing in Ottawa. People don't know that because people believe the lies.
In addition, financial institutions will be authorized or directed to render essential services to help address the situation, including by regulating and prohibiting the use of property to fund or support.
Oh, listen to that part. Listen to that part, people. Come on, what's going on here?
Including by regulating,
prohibiting
the use of property to fund or support illegal blockades.
Constitutional. Seizing and prohibiting the use of private property to fund the illegal blockade. So say it's illegal and then tell people what they can and cannot do with their money, with their support, with their free speech, with their association. But wait, don't worry, guys. He's going to respect the constitutional rights because he's been doing that for the last 2 years.
Finally, will enable the RCMP to enforce municipal bylaws and provincial offenses where required.
Why couldn't the provincial police do that? You're saying that the provincial police were incapable of doing that, so that you justified invoking the Emergencies Act, Mr. Trudeau? Where's the evidence that the provinces were unable to do that? That could justify this federal overreach? Unable or unwilling? And this is the question I'm asking, and I don't have the answer. Are they unable, or is it at the provincial level they're unwilling to actually enforce the provincial bylaws for whatever the reason, either implicit support or I don't know, whatever. But let's just hear that again.
Provincial offenses where required.
Provincial offenses.
This is what the Emergencies Act does.
No, it's not. I'll tell you what the Emergency Act does. It basically suspends civil rights and liberties and allows the government to do exactly what his daddy did back in 1970, use the full power of constitutional abuse of the government to target, suppress, and go after political dissent. That's what it does. That's not what it was meant to do. What it was meant to do was deal with national emergencies, natural disasters, genuine attempts to overthrow a government. We'll go over when we go over the law. And when Amber gets here, we'll talk about it. That's what it was supposed to do. Not be invoked because people are having a dance party on Wellington Street on Parliament Hill for 3 weeks. And it's embarrassing to you, Supreme Dictator, for Trudeau.
Let me be equally clear.
Let me be equally clear. Hold on. What do we say? Let me be equally clear. What's going to happen now is going to be bullcrap.
About what it does not do. We're not using the Emergencies Act to call in the military.
This is the biggest look at the shiny thing over here to distract you from the insidious and actually more dangerous thing that they are, in fact, doing. I'll get to it after. This is the red herring. Look over here. We're not bringing in the military. Guess what? What they are doing is exponentially more dangerous than bringing in the military. At least if they bring in the military, you know who to avoid and you know what to avoid.
We're not suspending fundamental rights or overriding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
We just reserve the right to confiscate and seize private property if we deem it's being used to support or finance what we've arbitrarily declared the illegal blockade. We're not doing it, but we're doing it. But we're justified in doing it.
We are not limiting people's freedom of speech. We are not limiting freedom of peaceful assembly.
We're just declaring it illegal, seizing your trucks, getting in the feds to tow your trucks, freezing your bank accounts, and issuing monetary penalties, and possibly jailing you. I think he said that as well. But they're not doing it, but they're doing it. But they're justified because it's illegal.
We are not preventing people from exercising their right to protest legally.
Protest legally. So all the government has to do right now to justify invoking the Emergencies Act is unilaterally declare that your protest is illegal, and therefore they can violate your constitutional rights. Anybody buying this malarkey works for CJAD 800.
We are reinforcing
or the CBC.
The principles, values, and institutions that keep all Canadians free.
We are restricting your freedoms to keep you free. George Orwell is either rolling in his grave or he is laughing in his grave or laughing from above. So here we go. Jagmeet Singh, the other pathological liar, supports the measure because Jagmeet and Trudeau are birds of feather. They are no different, except for one has had the opportunity to be in power to fully exercise his corruption, whereas Jagmeet hasn't been in power, but has nonetheless, shown his full corruption. All right. So then I put up a bunch of tweets just to show, let's just take one example of the outrage. No, not this one. Not this one. This one.
Near
from where? Illegal protests.
Begunny First Nation in southern Alberta, near Lethbridge area.
Why are you here?
To help spread the message to people back home about what's actually really going on here and how it affects them.
Québec, la chute. Il y a une belle terrain de golf à la chute.
Oh, yes. Give me a kiss.
Reminds me of my grandmother.
My grandma loves
I haven't kissed anybody. Well, other than my wife.
Truckers could do. I bet they could get water to all those.
This is the dangerous and illegal protest. And then I just shared a number of the interviews to show how preposterous and absurd the justification was. Let me stop sharing now. Go back to my... How do I get back to the stream? StreamYard. Here we go. StreamYard. Okay. That's where we're at. This is Justin Trudeau. Oh, we'll get to the Chrystia Freeland clip afterwards. It's not the good one where Chrystia Freeland basically explains now, under the invoking of the Emergencies Act, don't worry, guys. Justin Trudeau told you not to worry. They're not bringing in the military. What they are doing is authorizing banks to unilaterally seize or freeze. I would say freeze and seize are basically the same thing, but let's just call it freezing bank accounts. They're allowed to stop doing business with personal banking accounts if they suspect that they might be, I don't know, using it for the purposes of promoting or continuing the illegal blockade. By the way, not only can they do this unilaterally, they can do it without a court order, either on their own or at the government's discretion, and the government has immunized them from civil suit for this behavior. So remember when Trudeau was saying, don't worry, we're not bringing in the military. Well, that's good. You don't need to bring in the military to actually physically execute anybody. You don't have to bring in the military to have a physical Tiananmen Square type incident. You could just starve them off behind the scenes and no one will ever know. Freezing the bank accounts with no court order, either on their own or at the government's direction, and being immunized from having done so. That's how you buy off the banks. That's how you buy off the financial system to carry out your orders. Thank you, Viva from the USA. Sorry, I'm way behind on the chats. Okay, so let me bring this all the way to the bottom. So you got Chrystia Freeland saying that, confirming it, not saying it, confirming it. And then you got people saying, well, they haven't done it yet. I don't know about this. Bro, that is a good idea. And so you have Chrystia Freeland saying, under the Emergencies Act now, which I do not think we have had any possible justifiable basis to invoke, Justin Trudeau, shamed, humiliated, mocked on the public and on the national and international scene, now goes full 1933 and invokes the Emergencies Act because this is a national security. By the way, let's what time is it now? We're getting, okay, I think Amber's going to be in soon. So let me before Amber gets here, I'm going to share the screen again. Not going to be able to see chats to bring them up. Actually, let me just make sure I take this one off. Yeah. Take the chat off, share the screen. Oh yeah, by the way, I noticed after my Steve Bannon interview this morning on the War Room, I noticed that thing behind me. It's like a Beanie Baby big doll. I'm leaving it there. I think I'm going to own it because the basement is an absolute disaster. Share screen. Let us now go to the Emergencies Act. That's the law? I just want to read the government summary. Listen to this. Government summary, Emergencies Act. The Emergencies Act, which became law in 1988, is a federal law that can be used by the federal government in the event of a national emergency. Listen to this. The act contains a specific definition of national emergency that makes clear how serious a situation needs to be before the act can be relied upon. A national emergency is urgent, temporary, nothing more permanent than a temporary government measure, Milton Friedman, and critical situation that seriously endangers the health and safety of Canadians or that seriously threatens the ability of the government of Canada to preserve the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Canada. It must be a situation that cannot be effectively dealt with by the provinces and territories or by any other law of Canada. There are 4 types of emergencies that can be declared under the Emergencies Act. This is from the government website, by the way, just so nobody thinks I'm making this up. And I'll just show you can I show you the address bar so that no one thinks here we go. I'm in incognito. A public welfare emergency, a public order emergency, an international emergency, a war emergency. Just listen to what the government itself says as to what can justify invoking the act, and then just apply it to the current situation and ask yourself, any reasonable person on earth who is not paid by the government or working for the government, could they possibly say, yeah, crap, what's been going on in Ottawa for the last 3 weeks? Such a dire emergency that after 3 weeks, the only bad stuff we hear coming out of there is from the state-funded media. Emergencies Act can be invoked to grant temporary, additional, and necessary powers to the federal government when provincial, territorial, or federal tools are no longer sufficient to deal effectively with the serious issues being faced, such as the ability to make orders or regulations that are believed on reasonable ground to be necessary to respond to the issues at hand. Public health, which they've been doing for the last 2 years. Close this. Oh, now you see. Now you just saw who I subscribe to. For example, when necessary for dealing with a public order emergency, the federal government can issue or adopt temporary orders and regulations regulating and prohibiting public assemblies, including blockades, other than lawful advocacy, protest, or dissent. Well, thanks for the truism here. How do we determine what is a lawful advocacy, protest, or dissent from that which is illegal? Is it just what the government says? So the government says illegal Ottawa protests, legal BLM protests. Some people say they didn't last for quite as long. I think you might be wrong depending on where you're from. Regulating the use of specified property. You know, I think they updated this. I think they updated this in light of the event. This is anybody who knows how to track the changes on this website. I'd be curious. Including goods to be used with respect to a blockade. There's no doubt they just edited this. Jesus, I wonder if they edited it since this morning because I don't remember reading this. Designating and securing places where blockades are to be prohibited, borders, approaches to borders, or other critical infrastructure. My goodness, it's such a blockade to the critical infrastructure of Parliament that Parliament met yesterday to vote on whether or not to end the federal mandates, and they voted not to end the federal. It's such a critical blockade of the functions of government that government functioned yesterday to not vote down the federal mandates. All right, whatever. It's all load of garbage. What was the impact of the here we go. When the Emergencies Act is invoked, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms charters continues to protect individual rights as the government of Canada takes the necessary steps to safeguard the safety and well-being of Canadians. It's for your own good, people. Don't worry though, the Canadian Charter still applies while we simultaneously violate the provisions of the Canadian Charter, and Justin Trudeau and the provincial governments who have been systematically violating the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms for the last 2 years is now telling us, don't worry, we're going to continue respecting your rights, which we haven't respected under this new, even more exigent or urgent law that we've just invoked, to authorize banks to freeze accounts, to criminalize. I don't even know what is in fact being criminalized, to make it so vague and ambiguous that people don't know if by bringing fuel in, they're going to be, Tim Cass is saying Canada's now freezing banks. People don't even know if you bring in fuel, are you violating the Emergencies Declaration? Transparency and accountability, because that is the cornerstone of all governments throughout the world, let alone tyrannical ones that lie to your face through a bot media in order to lie to you so that you get misled, directed into believing that all of this is necessary if all you do is listen to the CBC. So this is the process, and you can read it on your own. I don't exactly know how the process is supposed to work in terms of how long. I mean, it's supposed to last 30 days unless renewed or terminated earlier by Parliament. Oh yeah, here we go. Declaration. The Government of Canada must formally declare an emergency effective from the date it's made. They've done that. Government tables motion in Parliament. The government must table a motion in both the House of Commons and the Senate within 7 sitting days that asks for confirmation of the declaration and explains the reason for it. The government also, and they haven't done this yet, so I suspect this is the next process, depending on where you're from. Parliament votes. Both the House of Commons and the Senate must vote on the motion. If either the House or the Commons or the Senate does not vote in favor of the declaration, then it is revoked the very day. So I don't think they've done this. So I think there is still grounds for this to be basically stopped sooner than later. How do I get back to, I hope I didn't just close the window. So I think there's grounds for this to be revoked later on, depending on the outrageous public outcry, which I hope there's a lot of because it's outrageous. Oh, Dave Amber's in the house, so I'm going to bring him in a second. Viva is now the news station. Straight, true news, just like Wake Up America. We need this. Yeah, I'm not news. I just want to understand it for myself and then give my my outrage because it's outrageous. I want to understand it. Nobody can purport to have an expertise in the Emergencies Act because it's never been invoked. It's been purely academic or purely hypothetical until now. Now we'll see what the courts do with this. We'll see what our parliamentarians do with this. Not just the chief. Okay, interesting. All right, I'm going to bring in Dave because I don't think he has very much time. Let me just see this. This is one for your family because they have let you continue to cover this. Much love to them. Keep up the awesome work. David Setliff, thank you very much. All right, let's bring in, he's down. Dave.
Hello.
What's the good word, sir?
How you doing?
Good. For everyone who doesn't know, you've always wanted to see a lawyer in the frock and gown, or the gown and frock. This is what it looks like.
No wig. That's a British thing, but I'm appearing in a Quebec court later this afternoon, and I was in the Superior Court this morning, so that requires the formal attire.
I'm just going to see if everyone in the chat is telling me that the audio levels between the two of us are good, but I can't even scroll down to the bottom on time yet. Okay, let me know. Oh, it's really difficult to listen to Trudeau. Okay, if the audio is not good, I'll fix it in a second. Dave, look, I presume you have about as much experience as I do with the Emergencies Act, but we have about the same legal training to understand it. You put out a very, very good thread, which ordinarily I hate threads with oneself, except Twitter limits the amount you can put into one tweet. It's a great thread breaking it down. Give us your take on the justification for invoking the act and what you think might happen going forward.
Well, I came out, thanks for having me, by the way. I came out with this tweet a couple days ago in advance of the Emergency Act being invoked. I was anticipating that there would be talk about it being invoked, and I wanted to get ahead of that and set out what the criteria are. And in my thread, and I tweeted that out, I went over a lot of the very technical wordings. I think somebody had DM'd me after saying that I was, playing semantics or being technical by saying words matter. But I think it's quite the opposite. When the Emergency Act was created, you got to try and get yourself into the mind of the legislator as to what type of situations were they looking at. And so they were quite deliberate at crafting very carefully worded legislation that meant to treat this at a substantive level as something that is extremely exceptional. And going through it, I'm not gonna read everything I put in my tweet, but I can just take you through very quickly some of the criteria that are there that just don't seem to be met. I mean, firstly, right in the preamble, it refers to it being a national emergency. Okay, so that's something that it's not defined anywhere, but again, it's a preambular provision that helps guide us. It's not just, some type of disorder, but it's something of a national dimension, and it's got to be an emergency. It's got to be needed to ensure safety and security. And so the question becomes again, was what was going on in Ottawa and is what is continuing to go on in Ottawa, is that something that is putting into question safety and security? And I'm not talking about people who claim that they were ridiculed for wearing a mask because they walked by some protesters. We're talking about actual threats to real safety and security. There's also, it needs to be related to the government's inability to meet a number of its obligations. And there's 3 obligations found in the preamble. One of them is safety and security of the individual. One of them is protection of the values of the body politic. I'm not exactly sure what that means. And one of them is the preservation of the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of the state. Now, I will say this, Viva, I have mixed feelings about the protests that took place at the border. I think that part of the being able to protest includes the ability to protest at the border and to be seen and heard. In terms of the prolonged delay and stoppage of the flow of traffic and goods, I think that that's something that could have potentially attracted scrutiny under the Emergency Act. But we know that they cleared the border, and yet they still invoked the Emergency Act. And so we got to ask ourselves, is what was going on in Ottawa and what is continuing to go on in Ottawa, does that at all impact the sovereignty of Canada or the security of Canadians? And that's a really important criterion. It's not just me playing word games. And another thing also is that it isn't just referring to being impacted, but it's got to be it's got to be a serious form of emergency. Now, I note that in Ottawa, the roads that were blocked, for the most part, were blocked only partially. There was in almost every case a lane of traffic that was allowed to go through. Right on Wellington, I know that they shut down the Wellington Street pretty early on, and the government did that. The government put up barricades. But for the most part, the protests in Ottawa appeared to be done in a responsible way that wasn't preventing first responders from attending or anything like that. So there are just so many individual of the criteria that just aren't met for the invoking of such an exceptional power.
When I was live streaming, I think it was Saturday, not only could you see that the lanes were open for emergencies, a fire truck came blasting through, I would say at 70 kilometers an hour. I forget what street it was on. It was 2 streets down from Wellington. I mean, it's a preposterous, it's nothing but a joke. Now, we do agree on the blockading of the border. We can understand that is a much more serious, it's a much more serious method of protest and much more disruptive and arguably, more mischievous and potentially in the criminal sense. First things, like you mentioned, that's over. They got a court order and the blockade abided by that court order. And second thing, for anybody who saw the interview with Ben Dichter, the spokesperson for the Freedom Convoy 2022, they specifically said they don't believe in blockading. Oh, that's
Right.
my mother's upstairs. I just heard. Sorry, I heard a voice and I didn't recognize it. They specifically said they don't support blockading. So there can be, in my mind, at least for Ottawa, absolutely no justification. They call it illegal. They call it a blockade. They call it a siege. It is cars parked on Wellington, and that's the only street that, from a vehicular traffic perspective, is disrupted, although emergency vehicles can still get through. And other than that, I mean, that was it. Even the one street down, which is not in broad daylight, there wasn't one act of vandalism except a truckers go home on a sign, and there were signs. Everything was intact, no destruction, no nothing. So, yeah, people in the chat were saying that the act was denied. I haven't heard that. Have you heard any news in terms of the next steps in Ottawa?
Well, sorry, what were the people in chat saying? I don't think I can see the chat. So.
Someone said that the act had been denied. I don't know. Okay, forget that question. The procedure, Dave, going forward. So they've invoked it, and now they have to put it to a vote within 7 days before Parliament?
It needs to be ratified by Parliament, and it continues for a period of 30 days unless it's shortened or lengthened. I mean, I always find that these sunset provisions are somewhat superfluous in the sense that if the government wants to keep it going, they're just gonna renew it again. I understand that there's a certain element of legitimacy, but these sunset provisions need to have some kind of teeth. There needs to be some kind of upping of the ante, so to speak, for it to continue beyond that if it's going to have any value as a sunset clause. But just coming back though to the issue about the actual shutting down of the Wellington area, and if this really meets the criteria of being an emergency. I think one of the things we see is this is primarily a political issue, not so much a legal issue. I mean, it's a legal issue to the extent that I'm hopeful that some constitutional lawyers will challenge this use of that power. I can certainly say that if anybody I know gets charged, any of my clients gets charged with an offense that stems from disobeying an order which arises from the enforcement of the Emergency Act, I intend on using those proceedings as a vehicle to challenge the legality of the order to begin with. Because when I said it's a political idea, it's almost as though Justin Trudeau was looking for a pretext. You look at it in terms of just the public relations side of things. There was a valid protest. Tens of thousands of people were involved. Hundreds of thousands or millions of people across the country were very supportive of it. And yet Justin Trudeau still found, like many did, occasion to smear these large number of people with caricatures that they found, like one person carrying a Confederate flag or one person carrying a flag with swastikas, and try to characterize the whole group in that way. The same thing we're seeing is we may have seen what's called a blockade in one part of the country, but that was being used to basically paint what was going on in Ottawa with the same brush. And I think that was where I think he's developed some of his political legitimacy for doing that. And I use that with a certain degree of air quotes. But I think that he has used what was going on in terms of the blocking of the border to try and bootstrap his use of these powers in Ottawa. And they just don't meet the criteria. And I think something I was reading is that I think people of all political stripes are coming together. I've read some people on Twitter who are quite left of center and quite opposed to the convoy, who have been questioning, as have I, whether or not the conditions precedent for being declared an emergency were actually met in Ottawa.
Yeah, I closed the window and I can't bring it up. Am I muted? No. Not that Vaush is a legal mind to be trusted, but Vaush, who is arguably left of whomever, reaction was the same. WTF, but in the actual full spelled words. Say, leave it to Trudeau to do something like this, which unifies the far left and the far right in its outrage. And one observation that I want people to also appreciate, just analogizing this to historical events. History doesn't repeat, but it tends to rhyme, Mark Twain. And this is the rhyme here. Hitler used it was either a false flag or a legitimate fire on the Reichstag, but most people think it was false flag. He used that as the pretext to invoke the Emergencies Act to basically suspend all civil rights and persecute political adversaries. Trudeau didn't have to stage a false flag. He just used his subsidized media to effectively paint. It's not a false flag, but to paint something that is so detached from reality that people out there would think that there was a Reichstag fire in Ottawa where there was just a barbecue on the street. And he's used his media, who has misrepresented what's been going on, to now justify invoking the Emergencies Act. It's not identical. It's not a repetition of history, but it really rhymes even with what historical dictators have done to abuse of emergency laws. And just because I saw this tweet come up as it's here. The internet is amazing. Viva Fry, the Emergency Act webpage you viewed was modified at 5 a.m. February 15. Webpage source, data published 2022, 0214, date modified.
What do you think the possibilities are? They just corrected a typo or something.
Oh, no. I think if anyone can get the previous version and screenshot it and share it on the social medias, I guarantee you all of that talk about blockades and borders was non-existent, just non-existent.
Yeah.
And then it's like you only discover that you have these laws when the government digs into the archives of the laws to bring up the most egregious, offensive laws that basically usurp all civil rights and liberties. Go read. When I discovered the Quarantine Act, which was a relatively new law, I was flabbergasted. I said, never they're going to do any of this. And then, a year and a half later,
right.
A lot of it.
I'll leave you with this parting comment, Viva, because then I got to jump to court. But one thing I found interesting is that Justin Trudeau keeps saying that he is going to be exercising these powers in a manner consistent with the Charter. And many people defending him are saying it says there right there in the Act that it's got to be consistent with the Charter. And to me, this is like the equivalent of me strangling you and saying, I'm not allowed to assault you. I'm not assaulting you right now as I strangle you. It's just because he's saying that it is within the Act, and just because he's saying he's going to do it in a constitutional manner does not mean that it is. And many of the reasons why the police did not fully enforce all of the bylaws and even some of the criminal law is because there was an overriding charter protection for people to protest, freedom of expression under Section 2 of the Charter. Yes, there's a friction between those charter rights, which is the highest law of the land, and other laws like the criminal code or the bylaw offenses that say you can't honk your horn or things like that. And that friction is one of the delicate things that there's no clear-cut black and white answer as to how we deal with that in a democracy. But that was a friction that existed, and that friction remains here. And there's nothing that has occurred that suggests that these emergency powers are needed, again, going back to the safety and security of Canadians.
All right, man. David Anber is actually a practicing lawyer who has to get back to court. For anybody who has an issue in Ottawa and might need your services, where can they reach you?
They can DM me at my Twitter account. It's at David Anber here down in my title here. You can also just Google my name, David Anber, and there's lots of different ways to phone, email, or otherwise reach me 24 hours a day if you have any legal needs.
Okay, awesome. Dave, thank you very much. Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one. Now he's out. And just to show you, the dog went for a walk, and he's disgustingly filthy. That's right. But he still smells. Oh, you actually, now, hold on. Let me just get the hair out. Okay, there we go. Now look into his eyes. There you go. You see that? You could see what makes him blind. That's not an O-light reflection. That is the white lenticonus, whatever it's called in his eyes. Okay, here, I want to clarify one thing so there's no misconception about this or misunderstanding. WTF, the Emergency Act is not allowed to be used to edit the Emergencies Act. Did they just effing do it? They did not they did not modify the law itself. What they modified was the description of what the law allows you to do on the government website. So what we read was not the law itself. I'll show you the law in a few seconds. It was just the government website describing what the law does. So you can edit that as much as you want, to the extent it remains accurate as to what the law actually does. Yes, married, and I keep my schmeckle in my pants, as all the interwebs knows, because one person told me an easy way to avoid problems in life is not to, anyways, whatever. I'm a resident of Minnesota. How can we support the movement if they keep seizing the funds? Good morning. I think at this point, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't give that advice in the first place, because I don't know what can be construed as criminal support or unlawful support of the illegal blockade according to the government. So I don't know. I contact the organizers and reach out there on social media. What I was going to say, here we go. Let's see this. I think we got this one already. Okay, awesome. I'm not even sure if reading that, if that's considered support, that could be unlawful. We'll see what happens with the invoking of the act. My prediction is that it goes nowhere, and that Trudeau announced during his presser the other day or yesterday that within the next couple of days they're going to announce some updates on the mandates. They're going to say the science has changed, yada yada, and finally we're not going to do anything under the Emergencies Act because the situation is going to dissipate naturally at the same time. But my biggest concern, we'll get to the Chrystia Freeland quote. Thank you very much, Job 4. My biggest issue is with what the banks are allowed to do, because that is nothing shy of the most insidious financial warfare, which is, you don't need to end someone's life physically to end their life financially, to effectively render them unpersoned on the web. And anybody who has not yet listened to the real Anthony Fauci, see what they did to doctors who questioned Fauci's narrative back in the HIV epidemic. Assuming that it's accurate, you can question the accuracy of RFK Jr.'s book, but if it were not accurate and if it were lies, I presume that we would have known by now. What are the chances of I don't want to put bad juju out in the universe. The crowd at the Parliament is nothing but the most peaceful, peace-loving crowd on earth. Period. Unequivocally. If anyone has any doubts, go watch the videos. Now, I want to share one thing. I'm going to go back and share. Oh, hold on. There was one issue. No, we addressed it. Chrome tab. David Amber on Twitter. Share. Bring it up. I want everyone. Justin Trudeau is hard to listen to. Chrystia Freeland is exquisitely difficult to listen to. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland said at Monday's news conference that banks would be able to freeze personal accounts of anyone linked with the protests without any need for a court order. And can you believe that? Retweeted a Gina Carano tweet. Oh, here we go. That's it. When someone's actions shock both sides from Steve Bannon to Vaush, typo, damn it, you know that they've gone too far. But that's not what I want to get to. I want to get to... Nah, but I don't want to get to that. I want to get to Chrystia Freeland. Where is Chrystia Freeland's video? I know I posted it so that I could specifically play it so that we can listen to what she said. Let me just go down, scroll. Wow, this is nauseating. But this is just as nauseating for everyone watching. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. That's Rebel News. That's Chrystia Freeland. Okay, look for that image. Here we go. Listen to this, people. Listen to this.
This is about following the money. This is about stopping the financing of these illegal blockades.
Illegal blockades.
We are today serving notice. If your truck is being used in these illegal blockades, your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. Send your semi-trailers home. The Canadian economy needs them to be doing legitimate work, not to be illegally making us all poorer.
Can you imagine the audacity of Chrystia Freeland and the Liberal government to allege that the trucker convoy is making us all poorer when this government shut businesses down for a year and a half, indebted our country our children and our grandchildren for decades to come, printing money left, right, and center, selling us out to foreign interests. By the way, Chrystia Freeland is on the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum. We'll get there in a second. They're accusing the This is the most insidious tactic of warfare. I was going to use the T word for terrorism. They accuse their victims of doing exactly what they themselves have been doing. This is what they've been doing. And they're now claiming that the convoy is the one making Canada all poor and that they're going to freeze the bank accounts of the truckers, nullify their insurance. Again, this is Jack Posobiec who said this. Amateurs discuss strategy, professionals discuss logistics. She's threatening to take the insurance away from truck drivers whose livelihood has already been taken from them. But they want to make it extra hard. They want to now seize their trucks, possibly freeze their bank accounts. You know, at one point, I forget where the clip was, but Chrystia Freeland was talking about unlocking monies that people had saved during COVID. And hopefully they would do it voluntarily. Well, it seems like maybe Chrystia Freeland has now found a golden goose. Say, hey, if we seize all of these assets under the guise of illegal activity, well, maybe that will fund our government for a little bit. The audacity that this takes. I just want to hear it one more time.
Following the money.
Follow the money.
This is about stopping the financing of these illegal blockades.
I believe that the Supreme Court did not come to the conclusion that these were illegal protests. Maybe I'm wrong. I believe that. If you support doxing anonymous donors, you might be the Nazi. Okay. And I just want everyone to appreciate this. Speaking of following the money, that wasn't the good one. Let's go back. Get that one out of here. Okay, whatever. She's on the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum, and I don't know why. I do question. At that point, let's just unshare the screen now. You know what? Here, let's listen to Viva on Bannon. See that they made a statement saying that that Trudeau has finally gone too far, and this is the ultimate kick in the groin. Is that Trudeau says, "Don't worry, the Emergencies Act operates within the limitations and under the strict, limitations of the Charter of Rights. So nothing in this will allow us to violate your charter rights, which the federal and provincial governments have been doing for the last 2 years willy-nilly, locking people down, preventing interprovincial travel, preventing peaceful enjoyment of property, unlawful detainment, no due process. So the federal and provincial governments have already been systematically violating the Charter of Rights for the last 2 years. But now they come out and say, we're invoking the Emergencies Act, but don't worry, we can't go too far because we're limited in what we can do by the Charter itself, which we haven't been respecting for the last 2 years. So civil rights, I forget the name of the organization, but have come out and said they don't see how the Emergencies Act can even be justified in its application here, that this is dangerous precedent to be set. Steve, just imagine, this is the first time the Emergencies Act has been invoked since its inception. And what justifies its being invoked? This peaceful protest on Ottawa, which anyone who doubts it can watch my 35, 40 hours of live streaming, and the blockade at the Ambassador Bridge, which is no longer because of a court order which opened it up and the police broke it up, and now there's traffic going. So this is the national emergency that is sufficient in the minds of dear leader Justin Trudeau to justify invoking the Emergencies Act and giving the federal government even more power to stifle, suppress, and criminalize any opposition to the government. All right, stop sharing. Let me get my screen back up. And I'm getting news. I mean, this is amazing. I just got a tweet. Let me just bring this up. That now apparently, I have not verified this on my own. Oh no, I don't want to show that. I'm going to show someone's cell number. Passeport vaccinal retrait graduel. The gradual retreat or withdrawal of the vaccine passport as of February 16, large surface area stores. It's psychological abuse, and it's nothing shy of it. Under the guise of trust the science, hold on, people. Before I go into a rant, let me just make sure that this is true. Okay, we're going to do this together, people. Retrait graduel, passeport vaccinal. Retrait, come on, wait down. Oh, here we go. Vers la suspension graduelle. Vers la suspension graduelle du passeport vaccinal. Le gouvernement de François Legault pourrait annoncer mardi l'assouplissement, un assouplissement dans l'application du passeport vaccinal. They can announce as of Tuesday, so I guess they did it, and I just can't see it, the gradual easing of the vaccine passport. These mother cabrons. The science after they torment you, it's done. The person says, I would never give you bad info. It's been done. They've done it. Science. That's how quickly the science changes. Apparently the science changes with the polls. These people never forgive, never forget, and vote them out of office, and they should never hold office ever again. This is absolute abuse, spiritual, psychological, and constitutional. God damn them. Sorry. Thank you, Marion, for your sacrifices during this extraordinary time in Canada. Viva, my mic? Viva, your mic is too hot. Sorry. I'll back up. It's when I get very angry. All right. So, and let's just now. What I said before was that the modifications were made to the government website describing the Emergencies Act. I'll just show you very briefly the Emergencies Act itself. My prediction is coming to. It's not a prediction. It's just this is how idiots would govern when idiots are in power, and this is how it happens. It's dancing. It's a dancing and singing, but mostly peaceful protest. It is an entirely peaceful protest. Entirely. Period. Full stop. And anyone saying otherwise is ignorant or dishonest. And at this point in time, anyone who's ignorant has no excuse to be ignorant and therefore is dishonest. Emergencies Act, and this, I believe, is the law. This is the law. Let's just read this for like 30 seconds and just see what it looks like. The Emergencies Act, the preamble. I love this. Listen to this. Listen to the preamble of the Emergencies Act, 1985. So it was drafted in 1985 and then assented to in 1988. Okay. Whereas the safety and security of the individual, the protection of the values of the body politic, and the preservation of the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of the state are fundamental obligations of government. And whereas the fulfillment of those obligations in Canada may be seriously threatened by a national emergency, and in order to ensure yada, 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 in order to ensure the safety and security during such an emergency, the Governor and Council should be authorized, subject to the supervision of Parliament, to take special temporary measures that may not be appropriated in normal times. Federal jurisdiction, nothing in construction, nothing in this statute shall be construed or applied so as to confer on the Governor and Council the power to make orders or regulations altering the provisions of this act or providing the detention, imprisonment, or internment of Canadian citizens or permanent residents within the meaning of subsection 2, yada, yada, yada. Okay, I mean, this is it. The definition of a public welfare emergency means a proclamation. Public welfare emergency means an emergency that is caused by a real or imminent. And these words don't mean nothing. They mean something. Fire, flood, drought, storm, earthquake, or other natural phenomenon, disease in human beings, animals, or plants, or accidental pollution, and that results or may result in danger to life or property, social disruption, or a breakdown in the flow of essential goods, services, or resources so serious as to be a national emergency. And then we got this other stuff. You can read it. Now, this has not been, let's just go to the end where they would say when it had been modified. It doesn't say here. Whatever, you can go read it if you want to fall asleep. But stop sharing. It's nothing that we don't know already, you know, the 30,000 foot overview, because the provisions themselves, let me just get my camera back up. The provisions themselves are they say what they say. You have to respect the Constitution, and it's subject to the supervision of Parliament. But we've seen the way this vicious circle works. So, with that said, people, I'll read some chats. That's the latest. So, you know what? Hold on. Let's get the latest. So we'll have a French lesson here for some. Let me just see. Do I have this vers la suspension graduelle? Let me just go back here and get an updated news. Here we go. No. What the heck? Retrait, pas retraite. Graduelle. Graduelle. Here we go. Okay, I'll bring this up. All right, man. Listen to this. I'll translate it in French, and you'll get to hear my beautiful. I've been told it's a French from France accent because our teachers were typically Moroccan French growing up, but then I went to France and they said my French accent was French Canadian. So it depends on who you ask. Here we go. La presse. Retrait graduel du passeport vaccinal d'ici le 14 mars. The gradual withdrawing, pulling back of the vaccine passport from now to the 14th of March. Les faits, the facts. La pression continue de diminuer. Je m'excuse. La pression continue de diminuer dans le réseau de la santé. The pressure continues to be diminished or reduced in our healthcare system, où on devait bientôt atteindre le seuil symbolique de 2000. I'm translating this for you in real time, where we are soon going to reach the symbolic threshold of 2,000 hospitalizations. Trust the science, because science is based on symbolic thresholds that govern constitutional violations. Just let that sink in. La province recense toutefois mardi 56 décès supplémentaires liés à la COVID-19. The province nonetheless reports 56 additional deaths related to COVID-19. Related. Le ministre Christian Dubé devait annoncer une levée graduelle. So the Minister of Health, I think is who it is, Christian Dubé, is announcing a gradual lifting of the vaccine passport, starting with surface stores of surface area, the SAQ, and the cannabis store. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I haven't been to the SAQ since they've implemented this. I've been living off a stockpile, and it's been dwindling. So, I guess February 4. Oh, wait a minute. So I can go now. I guess I won't have my video of me getting arrested trying to get into the SAQ without showing a vaccine passport. Plutôt vendredi, whatever. Okay, so that's it. Doug Ford. Oh, lundi, le gouvernement ontarien de Doug Ford a annoncé que les mesures seraient retirées dès le 1er mars. Monday, Doug Ford's Ontario government announced that the measures would be withdrawn as of March 1st. On s'en va dans la bonne direction. We're going in the good direction. C'est ce qui nous permet d'envisager de retirer éventuellement le passeport vaccinal. That's what's allowing us to envision gradually withdrawing the vaccine passport. Avait glissé lundi François Legault. François Legault slid in Monday en avouant que son objectif est d'avoir un calendrier clair en vue de lever, while admitting that his objective is to have a clear calendar to lift the vaccine passport. Let me tell you something, you absolute disgraceful hypocrites and unscientific morons in power. It's not enough to lift these measures. It is. Am I still live here? I seem to have lost the chat. I've lost the chat, people. Sorry, I can't see it. It's not enough at this point to lift the measures. This can never be done again. And there's only one way for that to happen, and that is for the next government to come in and undertake that this shall never happen again. This is, anyone with kids knows, once you have a dog in your house that has bitten a kid, you can continue living accordingly and you'll govern your actions accordingly. But you can never look at that dog again and not look at that dog as a dog that bit a child. And what the government has done here has mauled children. I would say actually metaphorically, and I would say spiritually. And you can never look at that. That government can never be trusted again, ever. Period. Full stop. None of them. They can do the right thing tomorrow. They've spent 2 years doing the wrong thing, willy-nilly. The vaccine passports. Oh, I can't see any chats, guys. Let me just make sure that I'm still live here. I'm going to put this on. I seem to be live. I can't see the chat in StreamYard anymore, so sorry, guys and gals. So that's it. Progress. Look at that. It's happening. It's happening exactly the way you would expect it to happen in a comic movie, in a science fiction comedy where the world collectively loses its mind, is governed by politicians who have tasted a power that they've never tasted before, an unquestioning, not just a power, but an adoration from the general public as saviors, like we've seen with Fauci becoming an embroidered pillow of worship, a literal proverbial golden calf of worship from political elites who themselves view themselves as literal, metaphorical, proverbial golden calves to be worshipped by the lowly hoi polloi who don't know how to make decisions on their own. But don't worry, people. It has nothing to do with the convoy because Justin Trudeau just yesterday invoked the Emergencies Act. So can't have anything to do with them. This is okay. So that's it. Look, we're not going to have any more news on that now. I hope you understand the Emergencies Act a little better. I knew it existed. I've read through it. I mean, these are not things you study in law school. you know of their existence, and you need to know of their existence for when the government invokes them. There's been no, as far as I know, there's been no jurisprudential application or interpretation of any of the provisions, not just of the Emergencies Act. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure how much case law exists on interpreting the provisions of the Quarantine Act, because my sneaking lawyer senses say that a lot of those provisions are grotesquely unconstitutional and they just need to be challenged. So that's it. Quebec's doing the right thing after having arbitrarily and idiotically done the wrong thing. Tortured people for the last month and a half. Although, I guess they did convince, they convinced, some might say outrageously and offensively coerced people into getting vaccinated. No comment on anything related to science or medication or advice, just free will. Being compelled to do something under the threat of not being able to go to stores to get what you need for winter clothes in Canadian Tire. True, you can order them online, but a lot of people had no choice. And when you make a decision when you have no choice, that's not a decision. That's coercion, period. All right, what else? Let's see if anyone's got any questions in the chat. I missed a ton of super chats, and I apologize, but I thank you all for the chats. The problem is that they are dispersing the power to The problem is they are dispersing the power to execute the act to any random TD teller, essentially. And TD tellers don't care for conservatives generally. There's no question about that. I mean, and I don't think they've issued a formal directive yet that I presume would have to be approved by Parliament. So this is where I don't understand enough of the mechanism to know, yes, they've said it. Yes, Chrystia Freeland has come out and said it. They have not adopted, from what I understand, any formal directive that would need to be approved by Parliament, by the Senate and the House of Commons. I think that's my understanding of how it works. So above and beyond having said it, they've done nothing to actually implement it. And I presume it could never get implemented in any free and democratic society. But there is danger in even speaking the words and carrying out the symbolic actions, if not the concrete ones. Thank you from Chicago. Latinos for Trump. Thank you very much. Tony, Hispanic conservative. Can't verify your true identity. I can only see from the avatar. But that's where we're at now. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Imagine yesterday, Trudeau declares invoking the Emergencies Act to declare illegal a blockade whose stated objective, and I'm talking about the Freedom Convoy 2022 in Ottawa, is to end these COVID mandates federally and and provincially by extension, but federally. They invoked the Emergencies Act, and the same day, I need to hear the leaked recording of Doug Ford, but the next day now, Quebec is walking back the vaccine passport provincial mandate. That Trudeau gave them $1 billion spread out throughout the provinces. By the way, $1 billion to implement a vaccine passport across the provinces when Justin Trudeau still hasn't been able to provide clean drinking water to our Indigenous peoples on reserves. But hey, here's $1 billion to discriminate against the Indigenous while I simultaneously do not provide clean drinking water to the Indigenous, while I simultaneously complain about how systemically racist Canadian society is. Sorry, Trudeau, you might actually be describing yourself. Crowds of people in New York in front of Canadian embassies screaming no to mandates. Thanks to am I contributing to the protest if I say it's a thing of beauty to see this spread across the world? The people taking back their freedom, demanding their freedom in the most peaceful manner possible. And nonetheless, despite the concerted effort by the protesters to tell that guy with the Confederate flag to get out of there, because I know the guy who told it to him personally. Despite all of that, the media still comes out and lambastes them as xenophobes, racists, anti-Black racists, anti-Semites, transphobes. And I have literally interviewed everyone from all walks of the phobe life that they've accused that convoy of. Being there and supporting it. Despite that, they still demonize the convoy. I miss Barney too, but I saw a dog that reminded me of Barney. For those of you who don't know, we had a French bulldog named Barney. He was the original vlog dog, and He had a very serious behavioral disorder. He, I believe, had breeder issues, and the breeder took him back. It still breaks my heart. I saw a dog that looked so much like Barney the other day that I almost started crying, almost. But I miss that dog. But anyways, we didn't. 3 kids, you cannot have it. The dog would go into such an uncontrollable fit of psychotic rage. I couldn't put a leash on him, and I had to leave the leash on him so that I could walk him because he wouldn't let me put the leash on his collar. He would just, like a gremlin, like an absolute gremlin. All right, so that's the latest, people. So we're going to have a live stream tonight with Robert Barnes. I'm going to try to make it back to Ottawa. We'll see what happens. The news is coming out. There's going to be a press conference because slowly is the former to-be retired police chief of Ottawa is resigning. So we'll see what's going on. We'll see if he's resigning because the police force does not want to implement the measures that the government federal wants them to implement, which is why they need to get the RCMP federal in to do what the provincial police might not feel comfortable doing. Maybe that's why they invoke the Emergencies Act. Apparently, there might be other news. And if the police start coming down with, if they start towing trucks and arresting people, I will go there to document. CBC. Oh, there's been people on the interwebs, on the Twitterverse, doing that seemingly with impunity. I thought disclosing personal information, private information on Twitter was a big no-no according to the new CEO. How can I donate now that Give Send Go is down? I was told that Give Send Go is back up. I would just follow Give Send Go and follow the convoy campaign for updates. Did you see the video of the officer who went to the woman's house about what she posted on Facebook? Intimidation level 100. Oh yeah, but she was a nice young officer who was smiling, just giving out information. For anybody who hasn't seen the video, it was a nice young female police officer, which is, I guess, supposed to be less intimidating, but in some senses might be even more intimidating. Showing up at a woman's house, no warrant, no probable cause that anybody knows of from the video, saying, we read a post on Facebook about a protest that you're planning on attending, and we just want to remind you of your rights of peace and how to peacefully protest. Here's my number. Call me if you have any questions. Anybody who thinks that's not overt intimidation just because they sent a young, nice-looking female to do it might suffer from some bias of their own, because that is absolute government intimidation. We know where you live. We're following you on social media. To me, it doesn't matter that those are public posts. That's the government showing up at your house because of public posts to attend a protest, reminding you of how to do it. Dude, if that doesn't scare you, I mean, nothing's going to scare you. All right, here's this. I'm just able to bring up some chats before we wind this down. Kids are coming out from schools this Thursday at 11 o'clock to protest masks. Please support. This is it. It's a beautiful thing to witness. In Minnesota, I presume that's what no, that would be Minnesota. We are doing overpass support carrying Canadian flags and jerry cans. So hold on, maybe that's Manitoba? I don't know what MN is. I apologize if I'm supposed to. No, thank you, though. There are still so many people who are arguing to keep these mandates in place. How do we go forward as a society with this mindset? Vicky, it's even more absurd than that. You've got the media now whose job is not to reflect reality, but to shape reality, putting out polls or articles to the effect that lifting these restrictions will cause anxiety in the general population. Stockholm Syndrome 101. Abusive partner syndrome 101. Been abused and beaten for so long that the idea of freedom is somehow more anxiety inducing. The idea of not being in the abusive relationship is itself anxiety inducing, because you like Morgan Freeman from the Shawshank Redemption, or it wasn't him, but the others who are released from prison. Freedom is terrifying. How do you even go back to freedom when you were so used to being told what to do day in and day out, every moment of the day? But they want people to believe that. They want people to believe that so that there will be public sentiment to resist or to not look too much forward to lifting these mandates. But there's undoubtedly, it will be a real phenomenon that people are going to. I've read this, Rosemary, and I don't know that it's true, so I can't confirm it. But I've seen that meme, or not that meme, but those images on Twitter. When they speak of seizing the means of production, the centers of power never meant industrial technology. They meant human capital. Interesting. Ottawa police chief gets to resign and keep his pension, while people who refuse a medical procedure are fired. Double standard much. What I love to think and love to hope is that the police are actually on the side of the convoys. The police force, who themselves, as far as I understood, were compelled to receive the Fauci juice into their persons. And this mandate, this convoy out there is protesting that. This mandate is the convoy is protesting that, and I like to believe that even those who are still on the force because they may have complied under coercion are resentful of what they had to do. I like to think that, and we'll see. And in any event, the RCMP and the police of Justin Trudeau and these tyrants, these petty tyrants, are going to have to make a decision at some point. Do they support these unconstitutional government edicts, or do they uphold the oath that they took for justice and to support the Constitution? I hope this $10 causes me to be seen by the tyrant I left 15 years ago. I told my best friend I love you yesterday because I will likely never see him again. 22 years of friendship, and I can't go back. That's it. Anyways, if that's that, and that's it. At some point, if this is what society wants and they re-elect these tyrants, you inherit what you vote for. You inherit the country you create. And then you vote with your dollar and you vote with your feet. It is being reported CBC is contacting leaked GiveSend. They can call me. I'm not shy about it. You can call me, CBC. One of your reporters did talk to me at the protest. Every time you call it Fauci juice, I cringed. We should have just called it that from the start. Then no one would get it. Forget the cringe. It makes me nauseous. I mean, I admit I might have a dirty sense of humor. When I say that, I mean, it's ambiguous. It's a double entendre, as we say in French. Okay, well, that's it. The emperor is naked and his... Yeah. J'ai entendu que le gouverneur général pourrait dissoudre le Parlement et déclencher de nouvelles élections bientôt. Y a-t-il une vérité à ça? So I've heard that the governor general can dissolve parliament and trigger another election soon. Is there truth to that? Yes. They can have a vote of no confidence. And I believe, I'm going to embarrass myself for not knowing exactly if this is the mechanism. Someone in the chat correct me. I believe if they move a vote of no confidence and Trudeau basically gets a successful vote of no confidence, meaning the parliament has no confidence in Trudeau as a leader, I think that triggers an election. I don't think it just triggers replacing Trudeau. So someone correct me, but they could call an election tomorrow if they want. I mean, we just had one, cost $600 million. I ran in it. I ran. Just so no one accuses me of, no one knows what the future holds. So no one accuses me of being a coward if I ever decide that this Canada has left me, not vice versa. I ran for federal government, and I've done everything in my power to make the people see what's going on around them. And if they choose to ignore that, or if they choose to move on despite that, that is no longer on my shoulders. Okay. I don't think I want a BPM. These people they seem to get corrupted, but they also seem to just there are very few politicians out there who seem to be savory characters to begin with. There are some. Very few. All right. What do we say? We'll wind this up because we got to do another live stream tonight, and I got to go do some homework for the Barnes, vivabarneslaw.locals.com live stream tonight. There's going to be some news that you're going to want to go watch. Check out the live streamers who are currently live streaming. As you all saw, Zot, I believe, is currently live because I got a notification. ZOT, live streaming in Ottawa. Ottawa, LAKS. Adam Nucci. Oh, I have to go tweet out Mac John. I said I'm going to tweet out the bit from yesterday. I'm going to check if any other people have tweeted that. Tweet out Twitter support. Not Twitter support. Team YouTube for Mac John, who got a medical misinformation warning strike on his channel because of someone giving a speech in the background while he was live streaming the events in Ottawa. So if we can support him and get YouTube to hopefully reverse that. And what else? Who else? I know I forgot someone else. Anyways, you guys know. Then we've got Zot is too young. Dude, Zot. The channels are going to have issues in terms of dealing with what happens after this, because this is like I would say a once in a lifetime event. This is an event. And then the question is, what are they going to? Well, they've discovered the interwebs now. They're going to figure out what to do once this is over. There are kids in second grade right now that have never seen their classmates' faces. This failure of a policy needs to stop yesterday. It needs to stop yesterday, and they still need to be held accountable in the political sense. Love from Denmark. Thank you very much, Kim Storm. All right, so that's it. Support the streamers, people, because that's how you get unedited, unfiltered information in real time. And Zot and his sister are just fine. Yeah, his sister was streaming yesterday, I think. All right, people, that's it. Let's wind it down. We'll go for. I'm gonna try to end this at 1:30 on the 2nd. So we'll go for another 4 minutes, and I'll bring up some chats in as much as I can. Did you talk about the weapon? I didn't hear about that, so I've got to go bone up on that. See what's going on. I found Zot. Thanks to you, sir. Thank you. My pleasure. Yeah, I haven't heard that noise. Now let me see if I missed any super chats. None that I can go back and get. You of Ottawa, Scotty. Thank you. That's another one. And say no to the sea. Well, there is, by the way, everyone should stay tuned. There is going to be a major legacy media news piece coming out with me in it. So we'll see. Major, one of the big legacy medias. We can call them fake news if we want to. It's coming out in February. I'm going to go actually right after I finish this. Ask when, because they said I could promote it the week before they go live with it. So we'll see. We sat down for a long interview. We'll see what they decided to choose to put into this piece, which I will not. I'll give you an anecdote, a story that my dad told us growing up. The man with the jack. This guy is driving at night in the pouring rain, pops his tire, has a flat, needs to go find a jack to lift up his car so that he can repair the tire. And as he's walking from house to house to try to find someone with a jack, he's saying how everyone's going to not let him in because it's late at night. He's a man. They don't feel comfortable. They don't have a jack, even though they do have a jack, but they're scared that and then so he finally shows up to the house and he rings the doorbell and someone opens the door and he says, you know what, you can take your jack and shove it. As if to say, once you build up the negative response so much in your mind that you expect it wrongfully. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that this is going to be a legit, honest piece. And if it's not, we shall reassess at that point. Does Trudeau need approval from Parliament to enact the Emergencies Act? The Wall Street Journal seems to think so, but everyone else seems to say they can only revoke it. Can you clear this up? Sorry if you already did. You're all crazy. I think they need to affirm it within 7 days. So we pulled up that provision of the law. I think they make the declaration, and I think it needs to get formal approval from the Senate and House of Commons within 7 days of the declaration. And if it doesn't, the declaration becomes null and void or terminated as of the point of not ratifying it. I think, don't quote me, I may be wrong on that, but I think that's what we read. I didn't get Rumble notification. I didn't get notification on YouTube, but did super chat on Rumble. Thank you, Little Rock. I hope you're doing well. Let the chat know, how are you doing? We want to know. Little Rock had, I would say it's a serious run-in, not with the law, but a health issue. So I hope you're doing well now. If you want to let everyone know how you're doing. And that says Ayel Naaman. Ayel Naaman. Thank you very much. That's interesting. I guess that's a shekel symbol, and it looks like intertwined hands. Interesting. So yeah, I don't know. You're all crazy, but I think that's my understanding. David Quick, move your money to the Cayman Islands. We love you and your family. What is it? Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, to quote Donald Trump. I hate to say it, but if truckers would rather set rigs on fire than let them be... I hate to say it, but if truckers would rather set rigs on fire than let them be towed and confiscated, I would totally support them at this point. Yeah. I love the CBC analysts, these idiots, thinking, slash the tires, arrest the truckers, and move the trucks. Good luck moving that amount of trucks in any reasonable time. Good luck, but nice, good way to promote violence and destruction of private property. Could this be an empty threat that won't really be used? That's my theory, but may trick leftists into believing Trudeau did something rather than cave to the truckers. Yes, that's my take. I don't think this goes anywhere because of how absurd and obscene it is. And even civil rights groups in Canada are saying it's absurd and obscene. So that is it. Truckers could strike. And we'll see. One thing is clear. Whatever they do that escalates the situation, it only spreads the wildfire of this protest, both nationally and internationally. And it only makes Trudeau look like an absolute nincompoop, an absolute tyrant nincompoop on the international scale. Peckford said it has to be approved. Good. If Peckford says it, I trust Peckford. Brian Peckford, last living signatory to the 1982 Constitution. So they make the declaration. It's got to be approved within 7 days. And if it's not, I guess it's dead in the water. With that said, people, I'm going to end this stream. How do I end? And end it at 1:30 on the nose. So I think I got to go 2 seconds early. Thank you all for everything, for the chats, for the support. Keep on keeping on, and I will see you in Ottawa sooner than later.